From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today, I'll be reviewing the movie Big Trouble in Little China, released in 1986. Starring Kurt Russell, Kim Cattrall, and Dennis Dun. Directed by John Carpenter. The synopsis is, a rough and tumble trucker, Jack Burton, helps his friend Wang Chi rescue his fiancée, Mao Yan, from an ancient sorcerer, David Lopan, in a supernatural battle beneath San Francisco's Chinatown. The story. Gary Goldman and David Z. Weinstein wrote the screenplay after Goldman became inspired by the martial arts films of the day, with the spin of the story being a Western set in the 1800s. The main character, Jack Burton, was a cowboy, and his truck in the film was a horse. Taft Entertainment Pictures bought their script in 1982 and had them do a rewrite, but they still didn't like the results because they found problems with the setting of the turn of the century in San Francisco. After turning down a similar project, The Golden Child, also released in 1986, and wanting to make a film with martial arts components, John Carpenter was brought into the project in 1985 by 20th Century Fox. He said it was outrageously unreadable, though it had many interesting elements. The studio brought in screenwriter W.D. Richter, a script doctor and director of movies such as The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, released in 1984. John Carpenter also made his own contributions to the story, giving Gracie Law a background story, and sought to remove some things that he thought would be offensive to Chinese Americans. For the film, he also researched the Hong Kong fantasy film Zoo Warriors from the Magic Mountain, released in 1983, and a few other films with the same flavor of Big Trouble in Little China that predated it in the 1980s, such as Flash Gordon, released in 1980, Gremlins, released in 1984, The Goonies, released in 1985, and The Last Dragon, also released in 1985. The story is a bit like a roller coaster that starts off rather simply, with lots of comedic horror strands woven in. However, it ramps up very nicely, giving the audience a wicked adventure with twists and turns and lots of fun action. It's an adventure that doesn't require a whole lot of intelligent explanation. You would think that that would be bad, but its simplicity allows the events of the movie to surprise the audience, go off the rails, and even gives the characters a chance to really shine. Now for the pacing. At 99 minutes, it's short and sweet. Things move along quickly and a lot happens very fast. So I think it may be a movie that benefits from multiple viewings to see all of the little nuggets of detail that's actually in the story and in the setting. Now the challenge. The challenge in the story is David Lopan. It all began 2,258 years earlier when he was a young warrior and a wizard appointed by China's first emperor to be his impersonator during times of high security. Lopan must have really enjoyed playing the monarch because this resulted in a battle with the emperor, who defeated him and then cursed him to live eternally in a decrepit body until he marries a woman with green eyes to appease Qing Dai, the god of the East. The bride must be brave enough to embrace the naked blade, whatever that means, and then after the wedding he must sacrifice her in order to satisfy the emperor and end the curse. The emperor, we have to say, even though we never meet him, was one heck of a curse caster, okay? that is one heck of a curse. But the lore of the emperor was actually modeled after the real first emperor of China. Oh, I hope I don't say his name wrong. Qin Shi Huang. Please forgive me if I have. But the events were actually manufactured for the story. Lo Pan was also modeled after a real person, Li Qingyin, or Li Qingyun, who was a Chinese herbalist, martial artist, tactical advisor, and claimed to have been born in 1736, living to about 197 years of age. In the film, Lo Pan is considered to be the godfather of Chinatown, and he is the chairman of the National Orient Bank and owner of Wing Kong Trading Company. He's built up as a big baddie, but then you see him and he's really basically on his last leg in this ancient body. It's a container, basically, in which he can do very little in. He calls his body his tomb, and he misses the ability to touch and feel the physical world. And for a minute, just a minute, you actually feel sorry for this guy. Now, Lo Pan can leave his body and become a ghost-like creature of several forms. We see two of them in the movie. We see him as a streetwalker that he could possibly use to spy among the people. And then there's a more elaborate form that can affect the real world, ornately dressed and 7 feet tall. Lo Pan is childlike, petty, selfish, and very unpredictable. However, he's also very hilarious, witty, and sarcastic. He's very, very entertaining and mesmerizing on screen. You can see that he loves being evil. In his long and diligent search for his green-eyed bride, he finds two women who fit the bill. And because he's so greedy and so desperate to be alive, he decides that he is going to marry both of them. One is going to be sacrificed and the other will be his wife for physical reasons. I remember seeing this movie for the first time as a teenager and wondering, how on earth was Lo Pan going to be able to marry two women at once? That just really blew my mind, and it totally falls in line with his larger-than-life character. Lo Pan's henchmen nearly stole the movie from him. They are the three storms: lightning, thunder, and rain. Visually, they're reminiscent of the three assassins in the movie, and I may get the pronunciation wrong, so forgive me. It's Kazure Akami. So I'm pretty certain that was pronounced terribly. Released in 1973. There's a theory out there that the three storms may be magicians from the time of the first emperor, or even possibly boys that Lo Pan has raised into becoming his loyal henchmen. So they look up to him as sort of a father figure. And you kind of see that in the way they interact with each other. These three henchmen are top-level fighters with incredible powers. Lightning has electrical powers that has the power to burn things, and he also uses it as a traveling apparatus that allows him to float and anyone else he wants to take with him. He also has the power to zombify individuals under his power. I think he's the most powerful of the three, and I really like the display of how it's used in the film. There is Thunder, who has the most screen time of the three. He is a brawny fighter that uses his breath to summon his brute power. And then there's Rain, who is an amazing swordsman. We don't get much about him, or these three henchmen, but these guys you just don't want to meet in a dark alley. They're intimidating, and they create the tension that is needed to show that this underground world has some scary challenges for the protagonist. They contribute to the insurmountable circumstance, or quote-unquote big trouble, that keeps the audience in suspense. I just love seeing these guys on screen. Martial arts and magic? Yes, please! These villains are so influential that they were the inspiration for the video game Mortal Kombat. Lightning is the inspiration for the fighting character Raiden, and David Lopan was the inspiration for Shang Tsung. The empathy. The film begins with one of the protagonists, Egg Shen, in the story talking about who we all assume is the hero of the film, Jack Burton. Egg Shen is a sorcerer of equal power to Lopan, so they can never beat each other. There's a level of rivalry between the two. Lopan calls Egg Shen's magic a peasant magic, but he is definitely no peasant. He owns an entire block of property in Chinatown. The assumption and the rumor is that Egg Shen was a rival magician from the days of the emperor who is under a spell that keeps him from aging, and that this is why the two know of each other. It's also possible that Egg Shen moves from place to place defeating evil monsters and magicians, which also explains why he leaves abruptly at the end. Again, this is not totally spelled out in the film, but subtly implied. In fact, Egg Shen could have his own spin-off story, and I'd totally watch or read about that. One other detail that connects the story that Egg Shen might have had his own agenda is that he takes time to destroy the statue of the god Qing Dai instead of going after Lo Pan. That could have been part of his mission all along, since he knows he can't beat Lo Pan directly because they cancel each other out. The hero of the film is actually Wang Qi, who is in love with his childhood sweetheart Mao Yan, a Chinese girl with green eyes. He moved to America 5 years prior to work hard and save money so that way he could send for her and begin their life together. He now has a thriving restaurant and is ready to make the next step. The night before he's supposed to pick her up from the airport, he spent it gambling with his old friend Jack Burton. And that tells you a lot about his character. It's not that he's irresponsible. He needs money for one thing. And he's also willing to gamble to get his hands on more of it. But you also see that he's nervous. So maybe this was just another way to pass the time while he waited to pick her up from the airport. This is a big moment in his life. Wang Qi is a pretty serious guy when it comes to Mao Yan, but he's also fun, and you get a sense of that when he kind of raises his eyebrows comedically during an intense fight with Rain. He's not your hero archetype, but he's definitely, well, actually he is the hero archetype, but he's kind of understated in the film. He's an incredible martial artist that doesn't brag about what he can do. In fact, we don't even find out that he can fight until 50 minutes into the film. He's the strong, silent type with a mission to get back the woman he loves from these kidnappers, and that is his sole purpose. He asks his friend Jack for help, and the story really kicks off from there. Jack Burton is a loudmouth trash talker with a very unrealistically high opinion of himself. He's not mean with it, so it's almost adorable. He speaks about himself in the third person at times, and that's when things get really weird in a funny way. Jack's enthusiasm is like a kid trapped in a grown man's body, making him vulnerable and even lovable. He's entertaining to watch, and he knows he's putting on a big show. And I think that is because he uses it as a way to make himself seem special in a way. He's not just an average guy. He's Jack Burton, this larger-than-life character. And after a night of gambling, he gives his friend a lift to the airport where he heroically saves a girl from being kidnapped by a local gang, the Lords of Death, risking his own life in the process. He's got a good heart, but he doesn't have the skills to back it up, like Wang Qi does. He's got good instincts, though, but it's not exactly fit for combat. So, just to fill in a little bit more about the story, the gang snatches up Mao Yan instead of the girl that Jack saves. And Wang Qi needs Jack's help in rescuing her. Without much convincing, Jack is all in to help almost immediately. I've heard some people actually say in their criticisms of Jack that he's only after his truck, which is not true because he doesn't lose his truck until after he agrees to help Wang. And after Jack loses his truck, he doesn't know that he'll ever find it again. So he continues to get even deeper into the quote-unquote trouble and accidentally finds his truck at the end. What helps Jack is that Wang actually believes in him. He's sort of the rock in all of this. The thing that grounds the entire story is really Wang and how much he believes in his friends, giving him more confidence. He says to Jack, "My destiny rests in your capable hands." I mean, if someone says that to you, you're probably going to be like, gulp, okay, I got to bring my A game, or I have to help in some way. So I found that to be very interesting, the dynamic between the two characters. And now there's also another big misconception that Jack is stupid. And there are times when he's really smart, but it's his ego and his arrogance that makes him look stupid. He's not completely unaware of his faults. While the events of the story occur, Jack acts as our avatar, being a fish out of water. He asks the same questions as many of us do, and there's a vulnerability to him that is very endearing, and you want to see him make it out of this mess that he's gotten himself into. Otherwise, he's mostly an average guy, except he's got super amazing reflexes. Really good reflexes, to be exact. And when he utilizes it, he boasts his hilarious one-liner, "It's all in the reflexes." Oh my goodness, I love that guy. If he actually applied himself, he could actually be a great hero. And just when you think that he will fail, he does something surprisingly heroic. Jack Burton is an accidental hero. And I know a lot of people have said that he's a sidekick in the story, and I think sidekicks are heroes too. But to be honest, I think that Jack does a lot more than just sidekick duties, in my opinion. This sidekick is the one to actually dispatch the bad guy. He may have started the events of the film at the airport, but if you think of it this way, he actually saves the girl who is going to be kidnapped into slavery. He saves Wang by pushing him out of the way of a speeding car. He frees himself and Wang from being tied up in a cell. He accidentally stops two guys from killing Wang and his friend with machine guns. And he frees all the slave girls. You could even say that Jack speeds things along because Lo Pan mentioned that there were others that he had tried to break the curse with. He was relentless in trying to find the girl with green eyes and would have found Mao Yin in Chinatown eventually, and they might not even have won the battle without Jack's help. He's sort of the X factor in this whole thing. When our heroes prepare to face off with Lo Pan, Egg Shen says, "Only a dream can kill a dream." And he refers to Lo Pan as a dream. Egg Shen has a magical potion that he tells the group that it's going to make them all invincible in battle. However, when you see his face as he's riding down in the elevator towards the battle, he doesn't look so confident or happy about what's happening. There's concern on his face. And after taking Egg Shen's potion, Jack thinks it's magical. He even says that he's seeing stuff. He even has more confidence that he kisses his love interest, Gracie Law, in a moment that they have alone together. He's a little delusional at this time. And that's where I feel that the quote, "Only a dream can kill a dream," comes in. I love that little nuance in the story through his character. Jack is the perfect archetype for the flawed hero. He was the inspiration for Star-Lord in the Guardians of the Galaxy. There was even a similar scene in which the hero mentions his own name as if they were famous, and the enemy says, "Who?" As well, in the sequel to Guardians of the Galaxy, the actor that plays Jack in the movie, Kurt Russell, also plays Star-Lord's dad. And he was the inspiration for Thor in Thor Ragnarok, released in 2017. His love interest, Gracie, is a lawyer in Chinatown that, as she says, sticks her nose where it doesn't belong. She is at heart battling with the identity of being an independent woman and a hopeless romantic. There is a cute banter between Jack and Gracie, but you can tell that they're really not matched. At least Jack's smart enough to know when presented with the prospect of quote-unquote getting the girl, he passes it over for better judgment. However, when he refuses to kiss her goodbye, he may be saying subtly that he's not actually saying goodbye, meaning that there could be more to the story. You never can tell. The technical aspects. I find that the technical aspects of this film set the tone of the film and support the story in a way that's true to form. There were detailed elements of action, fantasy, and comedy combined, which is a very hard thing to achieve. There were actual shots taken on the streets of Chinatown in San Francisco, and subsequent scenes were in a world that many of us know little about. But it looked believable and it looked very much lived in. This was due to the great work by production designer John J. Lloyd, who created Chinatown for staging the gang fight sequences that took over 15 weeks to shoot and a large chunk of the budget. The interior of Egg Shen's place is the same interior of the Fire Station 23 used in Ghostbusters, released in 1984. It acted as the entryway to the very spooky catacombs beneath Chinatown, expanding the world and adding more danger to the fantasy. I enjoyed the many passageways and secret doors within Lo Pan's lair. The sets designed for the wedding room and the Buddha room were incredibly designed with a flair for fantasy that was visually mesmerizing and a feast for the eyes. And speaking of eyes, both of the actresses with green eyes in the film had actually brown eyes and wore contact lenses. It was a bit obvious in some scenes, but not all. However, I love the effect of the brides with the pupilless eyes in their zombie state or sleepwalking state. It was a creepy effect, and it continues the experience for the audience of feeling as if they're spiraling into more danger and mysticism. There were so many cool practical events of odd and unusual creatures like the orangutan or the werewolf monster. And then there was the guardian with all the different eyeballs everywhere. You can call him an eyeball monster. As well, there was an incredible job done on the comedic expansion and eventual explosion of the character Thunder. The cinematography by Gene Kundley was especially remarkable. The colors were so vibrant and bright, making them feel as if it was right from the pages of a beautifully illustrated comic book. The visual effects of lightning and glowing from the magical events that happened in the film was so great for 1986. They were incredible. The sound design was amazing during the scenes introducing the three storms, and also during the Burning Blade. They were just so rich and hypnotic. John Carpenter and Alan Howarth take credit for the score. Carpenter is well known for composing his own music for films that he directs, and they often have a very synth-heavy sound. It carries over here as well, but it's a little bit more upbeat than his other work. One highlight of the movie is the delightfully cheesy title song by the Coupe de Villes, a band that included John Carpenter and his USC Film School friends Tommy Lee Wallace and Nick Castle. It's a catchy song that even had its own accompanying music video. Now for the performances. Kurt Russell was John Carpenter's first choice to play Jack Burton after working together on the movie Elvis in 1979, The Thing in 1982, and Escape from New York in 1981. That camaraderie was evident on screen, as I really thought that Kurt let loose for this character, basing his performance on John Wayne. He encapsulated John Wayne's speech patterns when he was really playing up Jack's exaggerations and wonderful one-liners. He was a pure pleasure to watch. At the same time, he had a way of settling the character down enough to get serious for a moment or two, which draws the audience deeper into the story. And I thought his performance was nothing other than brilliant. Dennis Dunn played Wang Chi, who was not a martial artist but had some prior training. And you could hardly tell because his physical performance looked so fluid and authentic on screen. He has said that he was attracted to the role because, quote unquote, I've never seen this type of role for an Asian in an American film. And I think this speaks volumes about representation in the 1980s. Dennis was truly awesome in this film, placing a sense of urgency and importance on the motivation for his character, and Jack Burton as well. Prior to playing the role of Gracie Law, Kim Cattrall was a theater actor and loved it so much that acting in movies was a way of just for her to support it. In fact, each day she still performed on the theater stage during the production of this film. She previously starred in Porky's 1981 and Police Academy in 1984, which weren't glowing roles. However, this time she got to play a brainy do-gooder with a hint of a Brooklyn accent. Kim gave a very retro performance, harkening back to Rosalind Russell in His Girl Friday, released in 1940. One of my favorite romance comedies, by the way. The quirky and awkward banter between her character and Jack Burton is part of the charm of the film for me. Many critics complained that there was no chemistry between the characters, and I thought that was the point. Ultimately, Gracie and Jack are too different at the core, and I thought that Kurt and Kim worked out that nicely into their characters. James Hung magnificently plays David Lopan in the film. He always speaks so highly and fondly of the movie and his experience. He once commented on what it did to give unique opportunities to the Asian American actors and crew at the time. But it was still a struggle afterwards to get mainstream Hollywood projects to become more inclusive. His contribution to the film was incredible, injecting the character of Lopan with so much complexity that he's not only a joy to watch, but it's addictive. As an audience member, it draws me even more to figure out what he will do next. James Hong is a national treasure, appearing in 3 films that have been selected for the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. Chinatown, released in 1974, Airplane, released in 1980, and Blade Runner, released in 1982. Victor Wong plays Egg Chin in this. He has the ability to give the character more depth in his subtle facial expressions and nuances. Again, the scene with him in the elevator is one I've rewatched over and over, trying to figure out what he's thinking and leave the audience with a sense of mystery and curiosity. Susie Pai plays Mao Yen. She was a striking pet house pet of the month in 1981 and appeared in a follow-up pictorial in June 1982. When Lopan uses the needle of love to pierce the skin of Mao Yin, you can see Susie flinch ever so slightly because the needle did indeed pierce her skin. All of the 3 storms were amazing, but I have to take some time to totally nerd out about seeing Carter Wong in this film playing Thunder. I'm sort of a low-key retro kung fu fan, mostly stuff done in the late 70s and very early 80s. And Carter Wong is the star of one of my favorite movies of those films. Born Invincible, released in 1978. Oh, I must review that one day for you guys. He's so good as a martial artist that he's been in over 80 movies. He's done stunt work and directed fighting scenes for a number of movies, as well as being a martial arts instructor for the Royal Hong Kong Police Department. He is a true legend. Now my wish list. Although the movie has good pacing, I'd hate to think of disturbing it. But what came to my attention is that poor Mao Yin is pretty much a MacGuffin in this film. And although she was giving a lot of screen time, she's pretty much treated like an object. And I would like to have had more of her character revealed in action or in exposition. I also know that the intention of the film was to have Wang Chi be the hero, but there are several reasons that this subtle reality was compromised. One of them is the poster, which brilliantly captures the fun-loving Jack Burton, but Wang is miniaturized and in some cases completely omitted. Even within the story, I wish Wang Chi had even more moments to shine as a personality. One of the criticisms about this film is that it's offensive to Chinese Americans. However, if this film were to be done today, or a remake, or a sequel, or what have you, I think that the production should have a Chinese American or a Chinese writer, director, or producer, one of the 3, or maybe even more entities of decision-making power. And I believe that the big issue here is the tendency for Hollywood to fetishize Asian culture because it's not theirs. And so having someone in a place of power could really alleviate all those concerns. We have to be really mindful of this in the future. Enjoyment. Post-production on this movie was about 4 months, and it all seemed to be going fine until near the end when the studio decided that an extra scene needed to be added to explain that Jack Burton was the hero of the film. They didn't get what Carpenter was doing with the character and nearly undid the punchline of the film, that Jack was not the hero of the film, at least not in society's definition. The opening of the film with Egg Shen at the lawyer's office was a scene that was added. The scene actually betrays the continuity of the film by putting the events of the film in a flashback. As well, there's a claim that half of the block exploded in a green fire, when in the film, there's no such event that happens. However, it does give the audience a heads up for what's going to happen. That, of course, magic is real. And I have to say that the scene itself is not really, terribly bothersome to me because it's one of the least memorable moments in the film. It pales in comparison to the rest of the film. This was the last studio film that John Carpenter worked on at the end of the 1980s because he experienced constant interference during the production. Test screenings were overwhelmingly positive. However, the studio dropped the ball on promoting the movie and spent the marketing budget on Aliens, released in 1986. Luckily, home video brought the film a massive cult following, and even talks of either a remake or a sequel has been circulating Hollywood for years. For me, I can't say enough how much this film is not only a nostalgic relic of my teenage years, but also how inspirational it is for me as a creator. I don't know, I just love it. It makes me smile every time I see it. It's so much fun. The use of color, cinematography, comedy, martial arts, monsters, character, and epic events of magical proportions in this 80s classic, campy, fun, bizarre action adventure. Sure, did shake the pillars of heaven. My rating is a 9.3. Well, that sums up my review. I hoped you liked it. If you did, I've got over 100 of these videos, so go on and browse the channel and see more reviews from me like this. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit the bell icon to be the very first to be notified of my next video. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.